Hey everyone, Happy New Year 2022. How's everyone doing? Thank you so much for joining me today. So today is our sixth installment of our Freelance Masterclass series. And thank you so much. I see quite a lot of people who have familiar names. So I've seen you guys join our previous sessions. So today is the sixth episode of our Freelancer Masterclass program. And today we'll specifically talk about what we term as customized versus productized solutions in the freelancing world. So today we'll talk a little bit about what those things mean, how you can strategize your freelancing business in either to become a customized service or productized service provider, and how do you go about kind of like doing that. So that's kind of like the topic that we're going to talk about today. In our fifth episode, we actually missed out a little bit of content around negotiation. So I've actually built that into the end of today's presentation. So if we have time, I'll try my best to cover that content as well. So there's a little bit of a bonus content around how we can help you negotiate better with clients. And hopefully that will be helpful in helping you get more for your services this year in 2022. So to begin, again, I've reiterated this so many times, and I'm going to do that again in this episode. We want to make this workshop as interactive as possible. I am always very keen to help, answer very specific problems and questions that people have. So feel free to interrupt me anytime if you have any questions that come to mind. There's no such thing as a stupid question. If you've thought about it, right? If you think about it, I'm sure a lot of people have thought about it as well on this call, and I'm sure that they would be interested to hear the answers to these questions as well. And if I don't know the answer, I'll go back and figure it out, or I'm more than happy to throw it into the participants and see if anyone knows the answer to that. So again, let's make this as interactive and collaborative as possible. I think, again, a quick introduction about me. I am currently the CEO and co-founder of Ravenry. I've actually started a freelance business about 5 years back. It's in the consulting space. And since then, I've been able to scale that business into a proper agency. And I've actually managed to hire people to kind of like run that business on my behalf. So through this 5 years of experience, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've learned a lot of things around how do you actually scale a freelance business and turn it into something that is sustainable as a source of income. And my hope is that I'm able to share some of my learnings and probably some of my mistakes as well with as many people as possible. And this is why we are starting this Freelancer Masterclass series. As a CEO of Ravenry, we are also very excited and passionate about building solutions and tools to help freelancers take their business to the next level. Our latest product is actually a tool that helps freelancers build their personal storefront and website in less than 10 minutes. If you are keen to learn more about this new website, it's yet to be launched. If you're keen to hear more about it, at the end of this presentation today, we'll have a little bit of a sneak peek and also an invitation for you to join our alpha group community, just so that you can have a little bit of a play around with the new product. So stay tuned for that. So just a quick recap of what we've talked about in the past episodes. So I'm not going to, this is the sixth episode, so I'm not going to talk about the past 5 episodes. I'm just going to very quickly highlight the key things from the previous episodes. So we spent quite a bit of time talking about, figuring out how you can start a freelancing business. And I think the beginning of that is to determine what are some of the services you can sell as an individual, right? So I think I shared some strategies around how you don't want to, become a jack of all trades. You want to find a niche, and you want to focus on selling outcome rather than selling activities, tasks, or services. So that's, I think, in episode 2. And then we talk a little bit about how do you then, once you've kind of like set up your services, once you've set up your niche, right? How do you then find your customers, your first customers? So we talk a lot about how you can have and adopt a more experimental approach in approaching and kind of like, seeing potentially new customer, right? Identifying the segment, defining them, and actually getting out of the building and testing some of your assumptions about your customers and acquiring your first customers that way. And I think in the last episode, we talked a bit about pricing and proposal as well. So I think the 3 key strategies of how you price yourself as a freelancer, we look at market-based pricing, cost-based pricing, value-based pricing. We emphasize a lot on the way you communicate to your clients as a freelancer. And we focus on talking about the from to state, which is again, like more focused on outcome and results for the clients rather than the services you provide. And also we talk a little bit about some strategies on, that you can use to design your proposal so you can create a proposal that allow you to close the deal quickly, right? All of these episodes are actually on YouTube. So you can just YouTube search Freelancer Masterclass, and you should be able to find all of these episodes online right now if you've missed them. They're quite long. We haven't edited them to shorten them, but we will. But if you're interested to hear more about those topics, feel free to check out our YouTube channel. So let's start. So again, as I mentioned today, we'll talk a little bit about the different approaches you can take in terms of packaging your freelance solution. Specifically, we are looking at two different ways of doing that. One is taking the customized option route. The other one is taking a productized option route. So to begin, maybe I will define or explain a little bit what I mean by customized services. So again, on the slide, you can see when we say customized services, what we mean is we're talking about services that are tailored to individual customers based on their needs, right? So think about tailor-made suits, okay? So customized services are basically services that you offer bespoke to your clients. You change your offering depending on who your clients are and depending on their needs as well. And I think like as a freelancer, most of the time, this is the category we fall under as a service provider. We tend to kind of like go and talk to a client, and we'll try as much as we can to solve their business problem and cater like our services to their needs. So this is kind of like what I mean when I say customized services. And I want to give you some examples as well. So an example of someone who is very successful in doing this is someone called Marshall Goldsmith. I'm sure you guys have heard of him. He's a leadership guru. He's been able to kind of like, build a very big presence especially in the Western market around his leadership framework. And he actually monetized a lot of this through books, through speaking engagement. And I think his most popular offering is his coaching offering, right? Where he coaches really, really senior executive at a top tier organization, right? Now, the thing about like what he's offering is that it's highly customized and it's really tailor-made to each client and their needs. So for the kind of offerings that Marshall Goldsmith give, right? They are, because like it's a coaching solution, right? That means that you have to kind of like understand each person's needs, and you have to change your framework and your approach depending on their needs. So this is again an example of a customized service. Now, if you go and Google customized versus productized service, there is definitely a lot of movement or a lot of kind of like interest in trying to productize services. And this movement is very popular amongst freelancers, creators, etc. While it is quite scalable, right? Like once you've kind of like had a productized service, it's a very scalable business. It can help you generate passive income, which is really nice. I just want to emphasize that there is nothing wrong with having a customized service business. It is something that can become very sustainable. It is a business model that, someone can enjoy, like freelancers can enjoy doing for a long time, right? It doesn't mean that just because it's not productized, it's not scalable, or it's not gonna help you earn a lot of money, right? So I don't think that is true. So do not shun the customized service business model just so early. And I think I'll talk a little bit about, some strategies kind of like to tap into this business model to help you grow your business later. And of course, the other option that is, as I mentioned, is quite popular right now is what's called productized services. So what is this? So productized services are simply services that's been packaged into standardized offerings, right? So the scope of your service is usually fixed. The price is usually set. And that means that you are basically offering services that has been packaged so that you can scale it easily. So this is kind of like what it means to productize your services. So an example of a productized service that I think is quite popular. So if any of you are designers or creatives, you would have already encountered businesses like Yeti, right? So Yeti is basically a productized design agency. What they do is that they offer subscription, flat rate pricing for customers who want to access designers to do whatever design collateral on a monthly basis. So the way to do that is that they package all the design requests based on the collaterals or output right? So maybe it could be Instagram post, it could be a Facebook banner, etc. So those have all been productized and listed as output by this company. And they've already built very standardized processes behind the scene that ensures that customers can get all of this output delivered on the clock to them easily and scalably, right? And because they're able to productize all of these processes so well, they're able to scale. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they are handling, I don't know, like 20,000, 30,000 design requests per year, or in the past 5 years. So again, a very, very scalable model. And again, something that you can consider as well if you're interested in, turning your freelancing services into something that is a lot more sustainable and becoming a passive income source for you. So something that you want to consider. So what are some of the differences between customized and productized services, right? So these are the 3 key differences in my opinion. So with customized services, usually the main difference is that you want to be able to price your offering based on the value that you bring, right? So again, if I were to use Marshall Goldsmith's example, he's a freelance coach or executive coach. He doesn't go around telling people that he's going to charge, I don't know, $20,000 per month for like a coaching service for, a CEO of Fortune 500 company, right? So he doesn't package his service that way. He actually listens to the customer's need, and based on that need, he will understand what value he can bring. And based on that, he will then come up with a pricing for that particular engagement, right? So this extends to all different kinds of freelancing services. So it could be writing, it could be design, it could be research, it could be consulting. So whatever freelance services you're involved in or you're offering, you can always kind of like, price your service based on the value that you bring, right? So when it comes to taking on the customized service business model, there's a lot more flexibility for you to kind of do that. And that's one of the advantages of being in the customized service business model. On the productized service side, right, the great thing, or one of the differences, is that you don't need to kind of like, price your solution or your offerings differently because it's all been standardized, right? So customers can go to your website or can like request for, a proposal from you, and you already have a price list that is fixed, right? Which means that it's very easy for you to kind of like close a deal because, well, not necessarily easy, but it's very fast for you to be able to kind of like come back to a client with a proposal because most of your offerings have been productized and standardized, and there's no need for you to kind of like write lengthy proposals for these clients, right? So that's kind of one of the benefits. And the other thing about customized services is that usually it is a business model that works really well if you need to have a deep relationship with your client to be able to deliver great value to them, right? So any kind of like engagement that requires you to be a problem solver and advisor to their business is likely more fitting for the customized service business model, just purely because you're not able to, you need to kind of like be able to kind of like, spend a lot of time with the client. And again, depending on what their needs are, you need to be able to customize your time commitment. You need to be able to customize your deliverables and output. And therefore you are able to kind of like, get more insights about their business and provide the right solutions to them. Now, on the productized service side, that's not possible. Again, because you've already scaled and standardized all your offerings, it's easier to close deals, but there is no way for you to build deep relationship with your client, right? You probably do not necessarily even know who your clients are because you're just selling all this design subscription or virtual assistant subscription, and you're just kind of helping them do all the standardized work on a road basis, right? So you don't actually necessarily have a deep relationship with the client, and that limits your ability to kind of like charge them more or identify adjacent opportunities for you to offer new services to your client. So usually that's a limitation of productized service. Customized services also work really well for freelancers that are excited by projects. So I think for the creatives, usually you do not want to be stuck doing the same things over and over and over again, right? So again, in productized service option or model, you have to kind of like, focus on doing one or two things really, really well, right? So let's say you're opening like, a productized design agency. You want to be able to productize the way you create social media posts. You create logos, you create banner, you create, stock images, like hero images for websites, right? You want to standardize all of that. And there is very little room for you to be able to, I guess, be more creative because again, you don't have, or you don't want to spend that amount of time to scope the requirements with the clients, which will actually take away from your profitability, right? So that's kind of like the downside of productized service. And in customized service, you actually get that variety and you get to explore a lot more projects that are potentially exciting for you. And in my view, it's usually more suitable customized service for someone who is in the consulting space. So anyone who kind of like, is focused on problem solving in a very deep way, right? You want to kind of like, be offering your business or your service in a customized way. So what's the pros and cons? So I think like this is a bit of a repeat from the previous slide, right? So for customized service, I guess the cons is sales process can be quite long, right? But the pro is that you can charge more for potentially your service, right? So in my experience, what I've seen is you can easily charge 10x of what a typical productized service freelancer can charge when you are in a customized service space, right? And that is because you're building deeper relationship. You're able to articulate your value and your proposition in a way that is aligned to the client's needs, right? So that actually really helps you in terms of getting more and better pricing. The cons of customized service is that the client engagement process is very complex, right? Because again, it's customized, so you need to design new solutions every time, and it takes a long time to do that. And yeah, it's a lot more challenging, right? But the pros is that you have deeper client relationship, right? I just realized that the X and the tick is kind of like mixed up, so don't get confused. The left side is actually the cons, the right side is actually the pros. The other cons of customized service is that your billable hour equals your income, which means that if you can't do any more work, you can't bill a client anymore, which means that you cannot earn money while you're sleeping, which is not great, right? But the pros is that because you're able to kind of like, be engaged and, be involved in all the projects, usually people who are in this space and continue to deepen their capabilities in this space can become an expert and thought leader in that niche, right? So that could be a huge value proposition or a huge advantage for you if you're in that in a business or in an industry that requires thought leadership. And so what's the pros and cons of productized service, right? So the cons, with productized service, you are solving a very narrow set of client segment, right? Because you need to productize the service and standardize it in such a way that is specific enough that you are able to articulate the offering very easily to a set of clients. You need to have a very clear idea who that clients are and what their behaviors are. Then you can package your service in a way that appeals to them, right? The pros of that is that you can scale it, right? Because if you have, a process that allows you to serve thousands of customers easily, just building or creating logos, then it is a very scalable business. The cons is the offerings are very limited, but the pros is that it's easier to simplify that process of delivering the service. The other cons is it might be difficult to differentiate if you are offering something that is very homogeneous, very similar to what other competitors are offering, which is likely in a productized service business model, because you are essentially simplifying the service into something that is very easy to build and very scalable, right? Which means that a lot of people potentially can offer the same kind of solution as you, which means there is a lot of competition in the market, right? But the pros of that is that it's very predictable what kind of offerings they are in the market, and you can actually beat them as well. The cons of productized service is that usually there's a big upfront investment in building processes, developing the right system, training people, scaling it, building a good sales process, etc. Right? But usually the payoff is that you are actually building a passive income business as a freelancer, which is again awesome. So in my experience, most freelancers are able to offer their services in both customized and productized versions. So I'm just going to run through this really quickly, just so that you have an idea of how this might look like, in either business model. So design services, right? So if you are, providing design services, a customized version of that might be, you offering some sort of a branding consulting / design. You have to jump on a call with the client to do an interview to understand, what the business value are, the concept that they want, options, and then final design. And you can charge probably something like $20,000 to $30,000 per project, right? A productized version of a design service could be, oh, I'm just going to charge you $100 per week, but you can only get 3 Instagram posts and you can get 2 edits or revision per post. That's it, right? No fuss, no frills. This is all I offer. I'm going to scale this, right? So an example. Another example with a writing service is the customized and productized version might look like this. So customized might be, oh, I'm going to jump on a call with the client and figure out if their site is performing well from an SEO perspective. And then I'm going to come up with some ideas on content pillars that will help them stand out in the, in Google search. And I'm going to promise them that I'm going to increase traffic by 20% in 2 months. And that's going to cost the client $15,000, right? As opposed to a productized version, which is just basically a website that says, hey, you want 3 articles per week, I can create that for you. It's $1,500. And I'm going to write 3 articles with a maximum of 1,000 words. Research services, again, I started Ravenry. This is what we do. The customized, we still offer customized option, right? So customized option is, where we sit down with the client and help them understand, oh, okay, like you are trying to get into a new market. As a result of that, you want to figure out like, what's the market, insights, right? A lot of clients may not know like what questions to ask and how to structure their research project. So we can help them with all of those framework design. We can even help them recruit the panelists, do the survey design, and do the final analysis. And we'll charge like $20,000, for example. But a productized version of that might be, okay, why don't you go to our website, choose what kind of report you need. Is it market sizing? Is it competitor analysis? Is it trend analysis? Is it regulation? Based on that, you can pay $1,000 for that, right? And then you can get 2 revisions with no editorial support from our team, right? But it's only going to cost you $1,000. So it's very scalable. But again, we're not able to kind of help the clients in a deeper way and in a more meaningful way. Yeah. Another example, personal assistant service. So your customized option might be, okay, I'm gonna offer you 50 hours a week for $2,000 a month. Sorry, 50 hours a month for $2,000, and I'm gonna do ABC for you, right? But there's no clear definition of what those ABC are. So it's just a very loosely defined, oh, I'm gonna reply email, do calendar management, interview services, right? A productized version of that, maybe a personal assistant or a VA they just want to focus on sales support, can say, I'm gonna help you find 50 leads and then send 50 emails to those leads every month for $1,000. And on top of that, I'm gonna make sure that you can get 10 client bookings per month or client meetings per month from those leads, right? So that is a productized version of that. You're not gonna entertain the client's request of, oh, can you please reply to this client this way? Can you please help me manage this calendar? Can you help me do interview with this person? You're not gonna entertain any of that. You're just gonna focus on, helping them generate leads and sending emails. That's it, right? So an option of as a PA or VA that you can consider as well. So how do you decide then, whether or not you should go down the productized or customized route? So I've created a very simple flowchart that you can take a look at. So my suggestion for most freelancers or business owners is that just start selling, okay? I think if you go through the first 5 episodes, we have a quite a clear guideline on how you can kickstart your freelancing business. So start selling, right? But as you can starting, your business, try to identify the right niche for you, right? How do you identify a niche? You want to understand, what your capabilities are, where you can add most value, right? And then what I want to do is I want you to analyze where your 80-20 rule applies in your business, right? And specifically, I want you to look at what activity drives 80% of your revenue in your business, right? Or what kind of services generate 80% of your income, in any one month, right? And I want you to pay close attention to all the things that you do and the amount of money that it brings you. And then based on that, you want to identify recurrence of those activities, right? And so maybe it could be client asking you for, just logo design if you're a designer, or just writing, an article, a technical article about, the new programming language, or it could just be, doing SEO audit, right? So whatever it is, identify which of your services repeats the most, right? And then from there, you want to analyze 2 things. One, you want to analyze the process of which or through which you deliver that output or service. And the second one is that you want to analyze the output you generate, right? So let's start with the output. So the questions that you need to ask, there are 2 questions. One is, can your output be clearly defined, right? Which means that, is it easily packaged? Is it easily communicated to clients, right? That output, right? So clients need to know exactly what they're going to get, right? If they're buying that service from you. So can you actually articulate that really well? Second question you want to ask with regards to output is it clearly scoped, the output? Is it easy to scope the output? Which means that all the services that is required to deliver and create that deliverable or output can be defined well, can be scoped really well, right? So the question that you need to ask yourself is, can you do that, right? Now, the second question is around process, or the second kind of category of questions is around the process, right? So when you look at your business or activities as a freelancer, can you operationalize most of your processes, okay? And by that, what I mean is automate or delegate, right, or outsource. The second question you need to ask is, because again, we're in the service business, so it's likely there's not a lot of pure automation solution for you, right? So let's say if you're a designer, there's no way you can outsource it to an AI to kind of like help clients, generate like their social media posts. Unlikely, right? So then the question you need to answer for yourself is, can you actually find people to take on some of these tasks, and are they easy to train? Okay. So once you've asked yourself these 4 questions, right? If the answer to these 4 questions are yes, 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 then the likely route that you want to take is the productized service route. If it's no for process or output, right, then you might want to start or continue customizing first, right, until such time when you have enough data or enough clientele to be able to productize some of your offerings. But in the meantime, you might want to just deepen your capabilities in delivering customized service. Is there any question so far about this? Okay. All good. Okay, I'm just going to continue for now. So let's talk really quickly about the 80-20 rule, right? So I think as a freelancer, it's very common that we get thrown into a lot of different kinds of project, right? So at any one point in time, you might be juggling, a design project that requires, branding, support. Some will just be like, oh, I just need to do like a website, some will require you to do like, social media posts. Some will require you to do posts for articles, right, etc. Right? So it'll be quite a large range of, mixed bag of things to do. So the 80-20 rule basically asks you the following question: which of your activities generate 80% of your revenue, right? And you want to just focus on that activity because those are the ones that are likeliest to be productized, right? So as you're kind of like building your business as a freelancer, keep a close eye on all those activities and see whether or not those actually are helping you generate which activity actually help you generate most of your revenue. Now, once you kind of like have that, as I've mentioned, I think you want to ask yourself 2 questions. First is, can your output be clearly defined, which is, can people understand what you're selling easily? The second thing is, can you actually scope that service or output really, really easily, right? So let's talk about the first thing, productizable output. So these are the 3 things that I think you need to think about when you're thinking about productizing your output. One is, can you define your output in terms of unit? Okay. So if let's say you are a design agency, what is 1 unit of output to you, right? You need to be able to kind of articulate that. I'll go into a bit more detail after this. The second thing you want to ask yourself is, can you objectively define what are the included services in your output? And the third thing you want to ask yourself is, can you build a natural trade-off between output and services? Again, this I'll explain, okay? When it comes to building a productized business, this is quite an important element that will help you scale, okay? So the first item, right? Breaking your output into units. So what I mean by that is, let's say you are a designer, right? What is 1 unit of your output look like? What does it look like, right? You can define it any way you want. Again, this depends on your 80-20 rule. So if 80% of your work, that generates you 80% of your revenue is generating Instagram posts, then your unit of output might be 1 Instagram post that is generated with stock image, okay? Not even like, hand-drawn illustration or anything like that. It's just stock image, right? If you're a writer, it could be 1 1,000-word article that includes 2 hours of research. If you're, in training, you're a consultant, you're a coach, right? It could be 1 4-hour in-person workshop for 25 people. So it's very, very well defined, right? It's not 5 hours, it's not 3 hours, it's not for 26 people, right? It's not anything more than 25, right? It's very well defined, right? So this is your unit of output. If you're a VA, right, it could be 10 sales emails per week, right? So when you are thinking of productizing your service, the first thing you need to do is to figure out can you package your output into units? Okay, step number one. Now, the second thing you need to figure out is, can you actually scope the services required to generate those output really well, right? What I mean by that is, for any output that you generate as a freelancer, it will still require some sort of services behind the scene, right? You can say as much as you want that, oh, like logo, I can scale that because, you know, it's simple, you know, like it's just one tiny little image and, you know, I can like, you know, produce 20 in, you know, a day, right? You can say that. But the reality is that, you know, clients will require revision. They want to jump on a call, you know, they want to, you know, change the color of something, you know. So all of that are the services that surround that output, right? So the second question you need to ask yourself when you're thinking about the output is, can the services that surround the output be scoped well, right? So for example, let's use the design example again. 10 Instagram posts with 2 revisions each and 1 hour design scoping call, for example, right? If you're a writer, it could be 2 edits and 5 hours of research. And I'll throw in 2 images as well, right? If you are a trainer, it could be, you know, 4-hour workshop plus 2 trainers and 1 external speaker, right? So that's again an example of like the services that you package into the output, right? Can you define that very, very clearly? And the reason you want to do that is because of the trade-off that you want to build in, right? Now, let me explain the trade-off concept a bit. Now, one of the challenges as a freelancer is that clients always change their minds, number one, and as much as possible, they want to get, you know, as much value from you, right, as a service provider as possible. And that is usually the bane of, you know, like being a freelancer. That's like the biggest pain point being a freelancer. Scope creep, you know, client incessantly calling us and emailing us for changes, revisions, you know, them not responding to us, you know, within 2 days, and therefore the project that's meant to be 3 days become like a 2-month project, you know, happens all the time to us, right? So the idea of building Tradeoff is meant to help us manage some of these clients' behavior, negative behavior, right? So basically the idea of Tradeoff is you want to make the client pay, well, in quotation mark pay, for any additional services or any additional, you know, request that they make in a non-monetary term, right? Because it's, again, as a freelancer, it's very hard to tell a client, oh, I'm going to charge you another $2,000 for this. I'm going to charge you another $100 for edits, right? So you don't want to do that, right? So you want to make sure that the trade-off is non-monetary, right, in nature, anytime they exceed the scope, right? So every time client requests for more things, anytime client, you know, like exceed or, you know, scope creep, anytime, you know, client, you know, delay, you know, the revision turnaround time, you want them to pay somehow for it, right? So that incentivize them or disincentivize them from behaving poorly to you, right? So how do you build that trade-off? A couple of examples. So this example is from a company called 55 Knots. So their business model is as follows. This is a productized business model. So they charge monthly subscription for unlimited design, right? So by unlimited, they mean you can, you know, request as many as possible. What we'll do is that we will queue your requests, right? And we will deliver them in a 2-day cadence, right? So every 2 days, we will like push out like, you know, a design collateral or output that you have to approve, right? Before we'll continue working on your next item, right? Now, think about it this way. So 55 Knots is charging a subscription. So let's say they charge $500, right? In a month, they're 30 days, right? So technically, if the client is a maximalist and they are very efficient, they can get 15 like designs, right? If they approve every single one of them. Now, that has already been built into 55 Knots business model. They've already kind of like priced this into their offerings, right? And into their cost structure as well. Now, what they've done really well is that they also accounted for poor behavior. In this case, the request for revision, right? And this is unavoidable, right? Anytime a design client come to you, there's bound to be some sort of a changes they want to make on their design, right? So how do you get your clients pay for it, right? In a non-monetary term. So the way they've handled it is that they delay the start of the next job, right? If the client requests for any revision, right? So every time a client requests for revision and a second revision and third revision, that is additional time that is not going to be spent on creating their next design. This disincentivizes client from behaving poorly, which means that client will make sure that their brief are very clear. They'll make sure that they don't ask for ridiculous, revisions all the time, right? And they don't ask for unlimited request changes, right, to the design, right, or scope changes, right? So this ensures that, they behave the way that, 55 knots want them to behave, right? So this is an example of one trade-off that you can build into your productized service, which is what I call revision versus output trade-off, right? The more revisions, the less the output you get. Now, a second trade-off is by this company called Performante or Performant. I don't know how they pronounce it. So what they do is that they actually offer, again, like design services, but the way they build their trade-off into their business model is that they actually provide credit to their client, right? And for every additional task that the client requests, they will deduct that task from the credit, the total credit the client gets every month, right? So again, this incentivizes clients to really think carefully about, their requests, whether or not they want an editor, or another designer to look at the design and make changes. So all of that is done, with a credit basis to make sure that the client do not, exceed the scope, the original scope too much, right? So this is another way you can think about when it comes to offering your productized service to client, giving them all this non-monetary credit and using that as a trade-off to do more work for them. Now that I've talked a little bit about the output side, the other thing that we need to think about is the process, right? If you're trying to, again, like scale your services as a freelancer, one of the biggest things you need to think about is the processes behind delivering that service. Are they actually, can they actually be automated? Can you actually operationalize a lot of these processes, right? Now, the secondary question to that, and probably a more important question actually, we are in the freelancing world, which means that we are in the service provision world, right? The question you need to answer is, can you find people and train them so that you can scale your business easily, right? If the kind of business you're in requires someone who is very, hard to find in the market, maybe because their skill set's really rare, or maybe because, they are in a very niche industry, then it might be very difficult for you to productize your freelance offerings because, your ability to hire and train these people will be very, 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 very limited, right? On the other hand, if you're in a business with a huge supply of talents that are easy to find, they're affordable and they are trainable, right? Then you might have a chance to productize your service. And this is why if you just Google productized service, most businesses that are able to productize, or most freelancers who are able to productize their services, are people who are in the creative space, because there's a lot of designers in the market, writing, because there's a lot of writers, engineers, because there's a lot of WordPress engineers out there that knows how to build websites for clients, right? So those are like the top services that are productizable, right? Not saying that it's not possible to productize training, VA, sales, whatever else you guys are doing. I'm just saying that these are the most popular ones because it's easy, it's possible to find people to scale your business, right? In a sustainable way. And that is important if you want to productize your business. So what does it take to scale a process, right? So first is you should be able to discretely break down your process, right? So what I mean by breaking down the process into discrete steps is that every single step in delivering your service can be very easily grouped or classified, right? So that you can actually outsource or delegate that task to people easily as well, right? The second thing is, as part of that process of breaking down the steps, right, you can or you should be able to outsource some of those steps back to your clients, right? So an example is, and I'm going to talk a bit about that again as well later. An example is when you create a form to get your clients to fill in, to get, their project brief, right? So let's say you're a writer and, you want to understand what your clients want from the next article, right? Basically, you can send them a form that they can fill in rather than you having to jump on a call with them, sit down, waste 1 hour, right? Having a call with them, brainstorming and talking, and just getting same thing, right? Which is that form that is filled in at the end of the day, right? So the question is, can you possibly outsource some of those steps back to your clients? The third thing is, now that you have discrete steps to deliver your service, can you quality control each of these steps? And finally, I think, as I mentioned, is it easy for you to find and train the talents that you need to actually perform all of this task? So this is an example. So I am using an example from my company at Ravenry again. So in delivering research consulting service, right, these are the 6 key steps that we are looking at. So first is we want client to be able to fill in the form or kind of like provide us with a project brief easily, right, so that we can look at the project brief and understand the requirements quickly. Second is we need to then get our project manager to assign the project to an analyst. Third is we need the analyst to start the research process. Fourth is we need an editor to fact check and edit the content. Fifth is the PM, the project manager, has to approve the research and then send it back to the client. And then the sixth step is the client can approve, right? Now, every single one of this step is discrete, which means that it's very clearly defined and scoped so that we can outsource that one unit of task to people very easily, right? That is important if you want to productize your service. And as I mentioned, I think you need to also learn how to outsource your process back to your client. So here's an example of a new product that we're building that allows freelancers to basically get their client to provide them the brief in the way that they want, right? So that it simplifies your process of scoping. You don't have to jump on a call with your client anymore. And again, very simple form, but you're able to kind of like send this to your client and get them to give you like their brief. And then the next step is to build quality control measure at every step of the way, right? So again, once we've kind of like built this process, right, you want to kind of like have documentation, very clear requirement list and checklist for every single person that's doing this task to make sure that they're actually completing the task in every step clearly, right? So you need to kind of build that quality control process. So the first one might be PM, right? So once a client fills in the form, the PM needs to check the form to make sure that the information is clear. If it's not clear, the PM has to go back to the client, email them, and get clarification, etc. So all of these processes and checklists needs to be done well for you to be able to productize it. Otherwise, it'll be very hard for you to scale this into 5, 10, 20, 3,000, 4,000 people, right? In a productized service business model. So you need to kind of like be very cognizant in building all of these steps clearly. And you also need to build a process to recruit and train people if you want to scale your business, right? For any productized service business, the limiting factor is actually people. So if you're not able to scale this process, it's unlikely that you're able to actually build a productized business. And it's like, I would suggest that you go back to becoming like a productized service business and focus on deepening your capabilities there instead. And this is what I mentioned, right? So if you can't productize your business, if you're not ticking all those boxes that I mentioned earlier today, right? So you should just focus on building customized offerings, right? And there's nothing wrong with customized offerings. Again, as I mentioned, one of the biggest pros of offering a customized solution is that you usually have a better control of your pricing and you can get better pricing for your service. And as you're kind of doing that and building that business, collect more data from your customers and see maybe there are parts of your customized offerings that can actually be productized, but maybe not the entire business, right? So an example is for my other freelancing business that I've been able to scale in the past 5 years, we started as a consulting business. Again, consulting is very much a customized business, right? So, you go around listening to clients' needs, and then you basically build a solution for them that is customized to that need. But having built that business or having run that business for 5 years now, we started to see some patterns in terms of the kind of work that the client likes to get from us or likes to get us to do. And once we've kind of identified those 1 or 2 types of offer or output, we are able to then productize those output. But as a whole, the business is still a customized, research agency business, a consulting agency business. But we are able to just productize a portion of our offerings, right? So that's potentially something that you can look into as well as you grow your business. Collect more data, talk to more clients, and see where the 80-20 split is and start productizing those items first. So one of the things that is great about customizing, offering a customized service business model is that you can deepen your thought leadership in your niche, right? A good example of someone who's done this really well is Neil Patel, right? So he's kind of like built his thought leadership around like, building content and becoming like this guy who can bring traffic to your website, right? He's an SEO guru. He writes a bunch of stuff about this topic. And, if you type in like SEO, you are very likely to see his name pop up as the first search result on Google, right? So again, deepening your customized service is not necessarily bad. We know as well that becoming expert in this domain is very difficult to productize, right? It's very difficult to kind of standardize and productize the SEO audit and consulting service. So as you can see, he's still offering calls and to jump on a call with the client to basically figure out what their business needs are and customize a solution for them. But the thing is, he's very successful and he's making a lot of money out of this. So again, do not shun this possibility of this business model just because it doesn't seem scalable at the beginning. So how do you go about doing this, right? So to deepen your customized service, there are a couple of things you need to do. First is, as I mentioned before, with Neil Patel, right? He's very focused on his niche, building his thought leadership, deepening his value proposition, right? And you do that by doing more high leverage activities, right? So what is high leverage activities? So these are basically activities that generate long-term result and very impactful result, right? For you. And ideally, a lot of these activities are around building thought leadership, things like creating content, winning strategic projects, so you can create case studies and generate word of mouth, recommendation from your clients, or even like investing in building unique processes and principles for your business. So again, I'm in a consulting business, so I spend a lot of time just building principles and framework for my business, so that when clients talk to me, I can very easily articulate our perspective in terms of how we can solve a transformation problem, how we can solve a growth problem, and they will kind of like buy into that principle and then buy our service at the end of the day, right? So these are some high leverage activities that are very important if you're kind of like going into the customized service route, that you have to invest in, that may not generate results or revenue right away, but will be very impactful for you in the long term because of the nature of the repetition, repeatability of value that you can generate from this content or from this thought leadership or from this like brand that you built for yourself, right? So I highly encourage that if you're in a customized service domain or route, try to kind of like build that thought leadership early on. But building and deepening your thought leadership or your customized service business doesn't just mean focusing on high leverage activities. It also means avoiding low value add activities or low leverage activities, right? So to me, usually I kind of like categorize them into three different things. So one is sales. So there's a lot of like operational stuff related to sales. So things like sending emails, responding to emails, following up, generating leads, all of this very manual and very repetitive activity. I consider them as a low value add, right? So these are things that you want to eliminate or outsource or delegate or automate as much as you can, right? The other one is delivery, right? So delivery in terms of delivery of your services. So again, for me in my consulting business, I spend a lot of time designing content as part of my delivery process. So what I've done is that I've actually built standard content, curriculum in my business that I can sell to the clients easily. So whenever we have a new project, I don't have to build all of those things from scratch again. Similarly, whenever we in my consulting business, I run workshops as well. So I don't actually start from scratch when it comes to managing logistics. I already have like inventory list. I already have my vendor or clients suppliers that I work with when it comes to finding a workshop space, delivering all the materials, printing, etc. So all of those things have been outsourced to someone else to do, right? So that's something that you need to think about as business owner. And finally, all the admin work, right? So invoicing, bookkeeping, recruitment, hiring, all those things. As much as possible, you want to outsource that. One note about recruitment, to me, recruitment is a very strategic activity, it's high leverage activity, but the early stage of recruitment is very low value. So think about job posting, CV screening, organizing, interview with candidates. So those are things that you want to outsource as much as possible in your business if you're again building a customized service business. So those are some of the things that you want to eliminate and avoid as much as you can. And that's pretty much it about productized and customized service. So in summary, these are the three things that I think you need to take away. So first of all, you need to think whether or not your service should be custom and productized. And again, I've come up with that framework of Flowchart. I'll upload this video on YouTube so you guys can find it. Don't worry about missing that part, so you guys can take a look at that again. And once you've identified whether you should go down the productized or customized route, Then you need to think about, for productized service, how do you identify output and processes that you can standardize? For custom services, how do you focus on high leverage activities and ignore or avoid as much as possible all the low value activities or low leverage activities? So those are the things that you need to pay attention to if you are kind of like going down the customized service route. And at this point, I will pause and see if there's any questions. So again, as I mentioned, we do have a bit on negotiation at the end of the call. I think I have a bit of time to cover that. But before that, let me see if I have any question from anyone. Feel free to drop in a chat about customized business. Happy to answer them, or just unmute yourself and just shout out your questions. Okay, if there's nothing else, let me quickly go through the negotiation bit so that I can close this chapter and move on for the next episode. So I highly recommend this book. So a lot of the techniques that I'm going to talk about comes from this book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. If you're not one to read books, you can actually subscribe to masterclass.com. I think he has a masterclass on negotiation that is really easy to consume. They're just a bunch of videos. Again, great way to kind of like learn how to kind of like negotiate and price your services better. So 3 main things that I think you need to take away from this book. Okay, one is you need to know who your customers are and what their style is when it comes to negotiation and when it comes to selling, right? So that's the first thing you need to identify if you're in a negotiation with someone. Second thing is the goal of the sales conversation or negotiation is not to close the deal, okay? Your focus shouldn't be that. Instead, it should be focusing on collecting as much information as possible for yourself, right, about the clients or about the situation or about the company. That should be your goal in negotiation, right? Because what happens is once you collect all of this new information, what you do with that is you are able to kind of like, you know, figure out a better way to position your services. You are able to better understand what their problems are, and you're better able to create an offering that will appeal to them, and that will put you in a much stronger negotiation position. The third thing is more around influencing strategy, is that you want your customers to feel like they're in control, which means that you do not want them to feel badgered into making a decision. You do not want them to feel like they're forced to make any buying decision, right, when it comes to services. So you want them to feel like they're in control and they have a, you know, they have an out if they want to, you know, have an out of the, out from the conversation or from the negotiation. They can actually just exit the conversation confidently, right? So you want them to have that control while you're negotiating. So 3 main styles that you need to think about, okay, that you can pay attention to. 1 is assertive type of client. 2 is accommodator. 3 is, the third one is analyst, right? So an assertive client, usually they're very focused on the goals, right? And they don't want to waste time, which means that you want as much as possible to uncover and get to the point, right? So in negotiation situation with them, you want to focus on the outcome, the results, the ROI, not so much on the process, not so much on, you know, like, oh, what we need to do now, not so much on, oh, like it'll take like 20 man hours. They don't care about a lot of that. They just care about, oh, are you able to kind of like, you know, help me generate 50% more traffic? Yes, no, right? They are just focused on that. So for those kind of clients, focus on communicating ROI results, you know, talk about your case studies, success stories. Don't talk so much about, you know, the amount of time you need, the effort you need. Don't talk about that. They're not interested. The second type of client is accommodator, right? So they're the kind of clients who want to kind of like spend a lot of time building a relationship with you, and you, as a result of that, you want to spend a lot of time kind of like keeping the conversation going, because what you want is that you want them to feel like they owe you something as part of that negotiation process, because they've taken too much of your time, or they've kind of like, you know, tap onto, you know, pick your brain so much that now they feel like, you know, they need to give you something in return, right? So you want, in that situation, as much as possible to keep the conversation going, because they enjoy that conversation and they want to build that relationship with you. So there is a lot of value in building relationship and spending and investing early on in terms of time with this kind of customers to extract as much information as possible from them. The third type of client, to me, this is usually the most difficult to manage, is the kind of clients that are very analytical, right? So they will analyze everything. They want details. They want you to write like a 50-page proposal with graphs, with flowchart, with diagram, with timeline, with breakdown of like, who's going to work on this project. So these are people who usually want you to provide a lot of details. So for clients like this, you usually typically want to focus on giving them a lot of information and being able to justify every single decision you make in your proposal, in your conversation. So again, as I mentioned, when you're negotiating, the goal is not to sell, not to close, okay? The goal is to collect as much information as possible, which means that you do not want to, ask question that ends with a yes, no answer, right? You want to ask questions that allow them to share a lot of details. So how questions are great, right? So instead of talking about, instead of asking them like, do you think this proposal is good, right? Again, that's a yes, no answer, right? Yes, no question, not great, because you're not going to able to extract a lot of information for them. Instead, you want to ask like, how can we make this work, right? What has to be true for us to be able to, solve this problem for you? What has to be, measured for us to be able to prove to you that our value is there, right? What kind of information do you need from me to help you trust me more, right? So all of these are basically questions that allow you to extract as much information as possible from the client to understand what they're thinking about, what their needs, what their concerns, and to be able to come back with stronger negotiation points. The second thing is also a strategy to kind of like collect information from the client. Oftentimes in sales or negotiation conversation, you have no idea what the clients are thinking about, right? But you do want to know, right? So a strategy to do that is to label their feelings and label their decisions, right? So an example of that is again, if you read the book by Chris Voss, he will suggest that, you start your sentence with, it seems like, right? So what you want to do is that you want to observe the client's behavior and you want to kind of like make a statement and label their behavior or their concern or their fear based on, your observation. So it could be, in a situation where you are having a stalemate in a conversation in terms of closing a deal, right? You can say like, it seems like your biggest concern is, our ability to, offer services that's within your budget, right? So instead of kind of like accusing them that, oh, you don't have enough money and you do not want to pay for my service, that I think is fair for my capability and for my expertise, right? You're just labeling that and you're allowing them to defend themselves or reveal like what they really think about, right? So maybe they can come back with like, oh, actually, that's not true. It's not about the price. It's about timeline. It's about this, about that. So what you do in that situation is that you're putting them in a position where they have to reveal more information to justify their behavior. And that's what you want. You want to understand why your customers are behaving in a certain way, right? So by labeling their fear and concern, you're able to kind of like get into that root cause and understand, their motivation, their drivers a bit more. The last thing is, and I think this is something that a lot of people make a mistake on in negotiation or sales conversation, is to learn how to be quiet, right? So oftentimes, once you've asked a question, there is a tendency for you to fill in the void of silence with the next question or with a comment right away. Don't do that. Just be quiet once you've asked a question. Give your client a chance to respond. That's what you want. You want to hear what they think. So make space for them to feel comfortable to respond to you, right? So once you've asked a question, just be quiet, give them a chance to speak. And if they don't say anything, right, just keep being quiet because they will feel uncomfortable and they will be the one who's offering more information to you, right? So learn how to kind of like control that situation by being quiet. The other thing that I mentioned is that you want your client to be in control, right? So one way for people to feel like they are in control of a certain conversation is that if they feel like they have the ability to say no to you, right? So again, like think about the situation you're in. I'm sure you've been in this situation where you're walking around the street, right? Someone approached you with like, oh, can you take this flyer? Oh, can you answer this survey for a minute? How empowering is it to you when you get to say no to them, right? You are in control of what's going on, right? You don't give them a chance to intrude your personal space and time. You want to kind of like, go ahead and do whatever you want to do, right? So you're in control. So one thing to do that is to design questions, right, that will make the client say no, right, naturally. So you should already kind of like work backwards. You should be able to work backwards from the no answer that your client will say and ask those questions that will give them a chance to say no, because those will make them feel like they're in control of the conversation, when instead you're the one who's designing the questions that will get them to say no, right? So make them feel like they're in control, because once they say no, a lot of times they feel like, they're the ones who are directing the conversation, and they are more willing to say yes at the end, because they feel like they're owning, or they're in control of making that yes decision as well. So again, early on I said, you want to label your client's concerns and fears with the phrase "it seems like," right? Sometimes you may not observe, like, let's say your client looks like they are very nonchalant about, your proposal. They don't care about it, right? Maybe that's your observation, right? You might want to label that feeling as, the fact that they're fearful of something, right? Because you want them to defend themselves, right? You want them to be able to kind of articulate and drive the conversation, based on their narrative, right? So sometimes you want to say things like, even though your client is nonchalant about like a proposal, you can say something like, "Oh, it seems like you're very concerned about like what your boss thinks about this proposal and about our approach." And that might not be true at all, but you're just kind of like throwing it out there, because then the client will feel like, no, that's not what I feel, right? And they will again reveal more information to you. They will actually drive the narrative of the conversation and try to control the way you see them, right? And that gives them power, and that makes them feel like they're in control. And that's what you want. You want them to feel comfortable and in control throughout the entire conversation, because when they say yes to your deal, right, you want them to feel like it's their decision. It's not you pushing them to do it, right? And finally, you also want to use emotions in this process as well. So try to anchor like some of these fears that they have in a conversation and push them in that direction, because then you make them feel like, again, like they're in control, and they have to justify all the emotion that they're feeling as well. Now, when it comes to pricing conversation, there's a couple of things that, these are a couple of tips that I've gathered in my years as a consultant. So one is you want to anchor to value, right? So oftentimes people, when they have a conversation about proposal, they're talking a lot more about cost. And I think I talked about this in the previous, if not like episode 4 of our Freelancer Masterclass. I personally prefer the value-based conversation approach, because it focuses the client on the kind of result and impact they're going to get. So this is also what you want to do during negotiation. Anchor all of the negotiation on value, not on cost, not on time, on value, right? Again, this is Chris Voss's strategy, which is ask the F question. F question is fair, okay? Not the other F word. So you want to ask the client, what makes you feel like this is fair, right? If let's say they're asking for something that is unfair to you, obviously, right? Or maybe something that is not, within the original scope of work, you can ask this question, because then that will again put them in a position where they have to think from your perspective. Yeah, why is this not fair to him, or why is this fair to him for me to ask, for more work from this person, right? So again, that question is usually pretty great in a pricing situation, because that will again put them in your shoes and get them to think and defend you instead, right? Ask the how question. So how can we make it work? How can we price or structure this so that it appeals to you? How can we so again, like the how question, what it does is that it opens the conversation for a collaborative discussion rather than a yes no answer. Because if you ask them like in any other way, they might just say no, like it doesn't work, like that's not our budget. But if you ask them how, they'll think about, okay, how can we work around the budget and make it work for you? Because ultimately what you want is to have a deal with them. I do this a lot, provide odd numbers. So when you're pricing or quoting a client, don't give them a round number. Don't give them like $20,000. Give them a number like 19,899, right? Because that shows that you've thought through the number. It's not some random number that you pull out of the air, right? And that number has been like carefully considered when it comes to discount. So you can always very easily say that, look, like I've really tried my best to give you the discount. Like, I can't give you any like more, like, I can't shave any more dollar from this. And this is the best price. And like looking at the number of like 19,888 makes them feel like, oh yeah, I guess like he can't really give us like any more discount, because he's like keeping that like last $8, right, from the in the price, right? So that kind of like again shows them that you are you've thought through your prices, and it's not just like a random number that you pull out of thin air. The next thing is throw in unexpected bonus. So that is again like to show that you've exhausted all your options and you've tried your best to give them the best deal possible, right? An example could be like, look, like you can tell the client, look, like I've given you the best price. is $18,751. Like I can't give any more, but since you insist, I'll give you a 2-hour consultation for free, right? So like giving them this unexpected bonus usually, again, like makes them feel good because they feel like, wow, like I got a really good deal. He even gave me a 2-hour consultation for free, right? And that again throws them off their back foot and helps you close that deal much more quickly and justify your pricing. Finally, create loss aversion. So loss aversion means that you want them to feel like, you know, this deal is a one-time only. And if you miss out on this, if they miss out on this, you're never going to give them this deal again, right? It could be something like, oh, like, you know, I can offer you this deal, you know, by the end of the week, because, you know, I'm actually waiting for another proposal from another client next week. And if that proposal goes through, I might have to charge you more because I don't have the capacity to take on your project. So you must let me know by this week because I want to prioritize your project, right? So creating that situation where clients feel like if they don't act now, they're going to lose out on something or miss out on something is a great way, again, for you to kind of like maintain your price, and again, put yourself in a much better negotiating position. And that's it. That's a little sneak peek about, or a little tidbit about best practices on negotiation. Let me know if you have any questions. Happy to answer them. But just before we kind of like go into the Q&A bit, I just want to highlight that we do have 2 more events for the Freelancer Masterclass series. I think the next one will be on the 19th of January, if I'm not mistaken. It's 2 weeks from now. So look out for the Eventbrite page. We'll send out the details to you guys, and we look forward to kind of like seeing you join us again. And if you're interested to learn more about freelancing and just hang out with people who have done it or who is kind of like trying to build their own freelancing business now, we do have a Telegram and Discord community that we curate a little bit. So it's not just random people there hanging out. So these are people who we've vetted and we've made sure are serious people who want to build their freelance business. Come in, join our community and hang out with us. You can ask me any questions that you have. I'm more than happy to support you guys in your freelancing journey. And you know, I know it's a lonely journey. So again, hang out with us in our community so that you can meet like-minded people and potentially even find more opportunities together as a group. And to do that, you can fill in this form. So let me just send this link on the chat so you can easily access it. There's only 3 questions that I need answered. Basically just some feedback for myself and for this program. Is this something that is helpful to you? Is there any other topic that you want to hear more of? Happy for us, you know, it's great because we want to create something that people actually want to listen to. And also you can drop your email so that we can add you to our Telegram community and also our Discord community. And this community will get, you know, the first dips on accessing our alpha product as well. So if you're interested to see how that product looks like and how it works, and you want to be one of the first testers, drop your email in the form and we will reach out to you as soon as we can. And while we are doing that, I'm open to answering any questions you guys have. So feel free to unmute or drop your questions in the chat, I mean.